my Forest Ranger truck. Ready to run Xtracab pickup. This was also a ready to run truck that I destroyed. This started its life as a RTR Marlin crawler. So this is actually my very first RC4WD drive truck I ever bought. One of the other things I did body wise that is detailed that you probably won't see anyone else that did. This one's still a little stiff. This one doesn't flex as much as the other trucks. Flex test. What is up, everyone? In this video I'm going to go over all my RC builds and projects, just so I have like a baseline video for everyone to see or reference if they're wondering what's done to my RCs in like a crawling video or whatever, and to show you some tips and tricks and techniques to build these trucks. And since my RC shelves and garage and all that, this whole room is kind of a complete disaster right now. I've been going through it. I'm just going to grab a truck, bring it onto the table, and we'll go over it individually there. So I'm going to start off with more of the boring projects that are just, you know, pieces right now, and then we'll go to the more exciting things like the blazer you see in the background. So we'll start off with this. It's a frame. Now, this is actually ready to go, ready to run. I bought this on eBay. It was literally brand new. Someone took it out of the box and just, I don't know, didn't like it, and they did some weird things to it, like put these really short shocks on it and then took all the leaf springs out, and it must have been their first leaf sprung truck and they just didn't like it. But it is a RTR Toyota Xtracab, like that pickup, but it was, you know, the black and all that. This is going to turn into a replica of my real Toyota custom cab pickup. And if you don't know what a Toyota custom cab is, I'll put a picture here. You can also check out my other YouTube channel, Conjo_Brothers, and I actually have a bunch of videos on there of the truck. But anyways, just to give you an idea what's going on. So there's the cab, and then over here I have this extension piece that 5150 Builds on Instagram sent me. Super cool dude. But this is for like a Mojave body, and I'm gonna make it fit for this and build a replica of my truck, which will also require me to cut and extend the frame and all sorts of stuff. So this is gonna be a big project, and yeah, we'll just go from there when I have the time to do that. So next on the table we have my Forest Ranger truck. This was actually my first Trailfinder 2 kit that I've ever built. It was a, you know, it's got the 2-speed transmission and all that sort of stuff. It kind of got lost and forgotten because I think the issue was I was having problems with the servo for the shifter for the 2-speed transmission. It was just annoying because it would throw and it would just be stuck whining the whole time, or back and forth. And it was just, I don't know, it was a pain in the butt. And now they have like a shifter cable, so it has a little bit of slack in it to shift gears and not constantly run the servo. So I might revive this one of these days. It kind of got robbed for parts and stuff, like the axle. I took it off for one of my other trucks I'll show you in a bit, but yeah, I'll put a picture up when this thing was in full uniform back then. But simple build. Got the little beacon and stuff that works. Missing the drive shaft, all sorts of stuff. But there's a 2-speed you can see. Yeah, maybe one of these days we'll revive this thing. Since we got this truck sitting in the corner, we'll go over this one next. So now we're getting into the current running and driving rigs. So this truck was actually another ready to run Back to the Future black Xtracab pickup from RC4WD Drive that I ruined to make look like a beater, more realistic. So one of the first mods that I always do on my trucks now are the shackle reversal kit, because this is actually proper to most trucks, and especially Toyota on their old solid axle trucks. The leaf spring hanger is actually supposed to be on the front, and the shackle is supposed to be on the rear like this. But from RC4WD Drive, they have it backwards, and I don't really know why. So as you can see on my old Forest Ranger truck, you got the shackle on the front, and it's not supposed to be like that. And it's weird too, because you'd think for durability wise they would have the hanger on the front, just because this is a moving part and you're going to bash it into stuff all the time. It's actually easier to work on with the shackle in the rear on the frame wise, and I'll show you that in a second when I take the body off that truck. But yeah, this is actually proper to Toyota, and I will show you a picture of my real Toyota solid axle as a reference. So this has the engine bay and all that fancy stuff. It was legitimate, just a ready to run truck that I ruined. and did some suspension tweaks too. Took the body off here. So suspension wise on this, it is basically stock. Obviously still leaf sprung. I did do the extended shock hoops up top, and then I can't remember if I swapped these shocks out or not. It's been a while, but I might have put a little bit longer shock for a little more travel. Only running the main leaf on it, just letting it break in a little longer. And like, I can't remember if I even have a spring in here or not. Sorry, it's been a while since I actually worked on these much. But in the rear, running 2 leaves. The reason I have one on top like this is to help with the axle twist, or whatever you call it. That way you don't just completely annihilate the spring and twist it in half. So that's just more of a support, and just breaking in these springs for now while I'm driving it. This truck is fairly new still. And I do have the scale SR5 wheels, because these are my favorite Toyota wheels that ever came on old Toyota pickups. Got the Falcon Wild Peak tires and 1.55s. I swapped tires out, like my underpants basically, so it's never really an important detail because I'm always swapping wheels and tires depending on my mood and terrain. I do have an upgraded servo, the Savox waterproof, whatever. I don't remember what voltage or anything like that it is, but yeah, stock 45 turn motor and all sorts of stuff. You'll learn, or if you watch my other videos, I'm more of a scale driver. I'm not really a bomber or anything like that. I just like the scale aspect of these trucks, and you know, the realism, making them look like real old farm trucks and stuff like that. I almost forgot to explain why this is much easier to work on with a shackle reversal kit as well. It's hard to explain. I don't have another single speed vehicle with this trans to show you like how it's supposed to be, but essentially like on the 2-speed, it's a little tighter, but these 2 screw heads are up against the transmission right there. So I have a video on this, so if you want to see like the full detail install, but if you cut an Allen key, you can actually get it down in there. This one you have to go from the bottom, cut it a little bit shorter, but to take out that hanger right there if you want to work on it or whatever. But yeah, you have to do that and just mess with it. It's just a pain in the butt because you got to do little turns and whatever. But when you do the shackle reversal kit, these are the 2 spots where the screws would go in from this side. So the head would be on this side of the frame. All you got to do now with the shackle being here instead of a hanger is just put a little wrench down there and hold the nut. So instead of messing around with all that nonsense, you just hook that on and use your screwdriver if you have one and spin it out. So it just makes it so much easier. And obviously this being in the front doesn't affect anything. It's still really easy to get to. So yeah, just overall, if you gotta do anything and adjust anything, or for some reason take that out, so much easier with a reversal kit. And I'll give you a little flex test on all my current runner builds. So this one's still a little stiff, but with a battery in it, the extra weight of the battery, it can get 3 tire stack usually, but not bad for a leaf sprung truck. So next on the table we got my Blazer. This was also a ready to run truck that I destroyed to make look normal. I guess I did kind of a nice job with this one, making it look kind of nice. I didn't do any of the rust or different colored fenders and stuff on it. Kind of took my time on it a little bit, but I just really love the Blazer body. Square body Chevys was my dream truck since I was a kid. And this was the first square body they ever released. Now they got the pickup and all that, which I wish I had one of those, but maybe someday. So a funny thing about this is this was, you know, the blue body limited edition when it came out initially, and RC 4-wheel drive, well, they said it was a limited edition, and I couldn't find one new. They were like $800 new or something crazy, and I ended up finding one on eBay that was brand new out of the box for a lot cheaper, and I bought it and ruined it. And then they came back out with the limited edition Blazer, so whatever. But anyways, I love this truck as it is. It does have the scale 350 Chevy V8 under the hood. Nothing too fancy with it. I took the springs and stuff out of the shocks on this one, if I remember correctly. Still leaf sprung truck, all that fancy stuff. It did some like plaid tape interior on the seats. Nothing too extravagant, just a nice overall scale rig. I don't really drive this truck that much compared to like all my other ones, just because it is super top heavy. I mean, maybe one of these days I'll get some wider wheels or something to stabilize a little more, but I do like the stock look. I don't want it to look like a mud bog or anything like that. But anyways, here we have under the body, nothing too fancy, mostly stock leaf springs. I got actually all three, looks like, in the front, because the body is super heavy. It's got this metal V8 case over the motor and all that sorts of stuff. These aren't usually the tires I run on it either. I have stickier tires that I put on it, but I swapped them off for one of my other trucks temporarily. The scale transmission, single speed, and from RC4WD drive, it comes with this aftermarket or whatever skid plate for this transmission and stuff like that, but nothing special. Rear, same thing, leaf sprung, and basically all stock for the most part. I'll give you a quick flex test on this one. This one doesn't flex as much as the other trucks. You probably get a good solid 2 on there. It's still definitely stiff. I actually haven't driven this truck very much. It is dirty because it was muddy the few times that I did drive it, but yeah, with a little extra weight and braking on the leaves, it should be able to get the 3 stack. But yeah, good truck. This is one, probably the only one maybe, that I actually consider selling or trading, just because I like pickups way more, and I'd probably just sell it or trade it for a K10. But yeah, maybe someday, we'll see. Oh, and another thing that I forgot to mention on the other truck is I do have the O-ring mod for the leaf springs. If you don't know about that, there's plenty of videos going over the O-ring mod, but it might help a little bit, but not too much. The only other thing I forgot to mention on this truck is this is the first and only truck I did the Chino mod on for the leaf springs, which basically all you do is curve the endpoints of the leaf spring where it mounts to the shackle or the hanger, and it gives it a little bit more of a pivot point. So real trucks actually have that, like in real life, leaf springs are already like that. So doing it to your scale rig actually just helps with a little bit of movement to help with the suspension move, travel a little softer and a little tiny bit more, a couple millimeters, but anything helps, I guess. This is the first and only truck I've ever done it on, and haven't really noticed a significant difference than my other rigs, but it's there, and it looks a little more scale having that tiny bit of taper to it. So I'll probably do it on my other builds too. Just that taper does just make it look a little more realistic. And I forgot to mention this bar right here. That is 3D printed. I can't remember the file or whatever, but 3D printed that, so it's actually like the real truck. It doesn't have those big awful holes for like a slide-in bumper for RC4WD drive, but yeah. So the last 2 trucks we'll go over. I'll bring them on the bench, but I'll show you my scale garage quick. Nothing too fancy, not complete or anything, but eventually someday I might finish it if I ever have time. Got the Ben Pack RC4WD drive lift, just a random stuff. Like, that's not the right scale at all, but it was really cheap on sale from Hobby Lobby and stuff like that. But yeah, not too bad. I guess while we're over here, we'll go over some of my other nonsense. Just some spare bodies. This is actually the original body for this truck, and then I swapped them out when I did the camper build, which I'll throw a picture in. And then trailer, I got, these are brand new, I have to sell or whatever off of the Xtracab truck. And I also have this. We're not going to go over their drift car, nothing really special, but I got the trailer down here and stuff like that. But yeah, we'll go over this truck next. So this started its life as a RTR Marlin crawler. So super good setup. Like if you're getting into an RC4WD drive truck and you're kind of in between, like wanting to have something very capable and into the scale look, highly recommend the Marlin crawler as a starting truck, because that way you don't get too bored of, I don't know, the stock stuff or whatever. But yeah, anyways, this is a pretty simple build. This one has the most modifications out of any of my trucks, and it's kind of just nice to have one to keep up with the boys, because no one really around here that I know of is into the scaler stuff, but this is kind of a good in-between, still very scale, but a little more capable. So we'll go over this one a little more in detail since there's more to it. But if you're old like me, this is actually an RC Model X front bumper. This was, I think it was like from Europe or something, I can't remember, but I had to order it from overseas. It is a solid steel bumper. Like, this thing is heavy. This truck is actually probably heavier or as heavy as that Blazer. Very, very good weight to it. Yeah, I got that bumper. These are some fog lights I got off eBay. Did the shackle reversal kit on this one as well because proper Toyota. In the rear, I have a Scalar Fab rear bumper. This is metal. It's super good quality. I love Scalar Fab products. Yeah, everything lines up good. Mine's just pushed out a little bit because I had the camper in here before, and I had this actually slid out even more than it is now, just to protect the back of the camper since it hung out a little bit. But one of these days I'll just have to adjust it, put it in a little more, but still doesn't look bad. Super good quality. Highly recommend their products. The rack I have on here, this little safari rack looking thing, is actually a pencil rack or desk rack or whatever you want to call it that I painted and just kind of made into a safari rack. It fit absolutely perfect in the bed of this. I had it in my other body originally, but yeah, I love this rack. I think it looks good on the truck. I don't know, let me know what you think. Looks like a safari rack to me, but this is equipped with a bunch of junk. Chain fell out from our crawl the other day. Actually broke a leaf spring on it the other day when I took it out in the last video. But just a overall kind of scale truck. You see the duct tape holding my tailgate on because I actually cut the tailgate for the camper and I haven't figured out hinges or anything to make it so I can actually have it in there, but you don't see that from the outside, so we're good. So under the body, suspension wise, obviously still the leaf sprung with the shackle reversal kit. These are the nitro charged RC 4-wheel drive shocks that I actually got off a parts truck I split with one of my buddies. So they were used, but they work pretty good. Front, I'm running 2 springs, and that's plenty for the front of this. And I believe, yeah, it feels like the springs are still in the shock there, because this bumper does weigh quite a bit, like I said before. In the rear, because of that rack and stuff, these are the super soft black RC 4-wheel drive leaf springs, and I actually have the springs in the rear of this. I only know that this truck a little more because I was just driving it and took it apart, so there is a little more weight to this truck and I needed that to support the rear. But yeah, very simple build. Still the 45 turn motor. I think all my trucks have that still. Stock servo that I extra waterproofed. Single speed trans. Eventually I do want to put the 2-speed trans in this just because it's more of a, I don't know, like intense build than my other trucks, and it'll help with the weight of it too for that lower gear. So one of these days I'll plan on doing that. But other than that, fairly stock. And again with the extended shock hoops, I do that on all my trucks. Same thing with the O-ring mod on the leaf springs, but yeah, very simple build, very capable truck. I mean, I keep up with people with their linked trucks and stuff with this, even my other trucks. That people have a lot of hate for leaf sprung trucks, but they work just as fine, and they're actually a little bit stronger because of all that metal. So I don't know. I've always been more of a fan of the leaf spring trucks for the realism, but also they get just as much performance out of them, unless you're doing some like truggy build or whatever. But yeah, I'm not into that stuff. And another tip, if you didn't know already, instead of putting those screws in and out every single time you want to take your body off, just take a couple little grub screws, thread them in there, and then all you have to do is pull the body over and snap it on. It's kind of difficult to do with this one because of all this stuff to get it lined up, but just like that. And then you don't have to mess with screws every single time you want to take your body off. Yeah, I like this truck a lot. And these are brand new tires that I bought, Milestar Patagonia tires. They're the 1.7s, and they are very good. They work really good. We just had them in the snow the other day and get some decent grip. I'll give you a flex test. I'm giving brand new leaf springs in the rear, all 3 springs that I have in the rear right now. With a little extra weight of the battery, it easily does 3 tires in the front. Rear will obviously flex more and get you the 3 tire test, but yeah, the rear always flexes a little bit more just because there's less nonsense going on and all that, but easy 3 tires. Lastly, we have the all-time beater. So this is actually my very first RC 4-wheel drive truck I ever bought. It was ready to run back in the day. This has still like the Yoda 1 axles or Yoda axles, whatever they were first. Actually, no, the front one I swapped from that Forest Service truck because I snapped a axle cup on the outside after driving it for like, it was like 3 to 5 years before anything broke on this thing. And yeah, it had so much dirt in it, and I never maintenance the axles that it wore out the cup on the end, and it finally just broke. And that was the first time anything broke on it. And just a quick random backstory. My first ever crawler was actually like I think it was a CC01 was the chassis code, Tamiya Jeep YJ. And I just remember as a kid, I was always drooling over the Tamiya Hilux high lift, and I just couldn't afford it because it was like, I don't even know how much it was back then, but it was like $200 more than the Jeep. And I ended up buying the Jeep instead, and I was so upset when I got it because it was a bucket, like a plastic bucket chassis, not a ladder frame chassis. So I drove it for a few years. You know, it was still fun, but I was just always deep down like, oh man, I wish I had the solid axle ladder frame chassis and the Hilux and whatever. So eventually I ended up saving up for the RC4WD drive truck, which I don't even know when they started making the trucks, but I found out that they existed and bought this one and sold my other Jeep. And I've been a fan of RC4WD drive ever since. So yeah, we'll go over this truck a little more. It is the original Mojave body. Actually, like, this is actually the old version. So on the rear, it has the side latch tailgate instead of the center latch. So it's kind of cool. One of the other things I did with it a long time ago was I got the Tamiya grill for it. So I actually had a Toyota Hilux grill and the round headlights. And just because this is my favorite front end of these trucks. This is like my dream truck since I was a kid. And yeah, so it looked more scale than like other vehicles back in the day. I used to have like 2,000-3,000 followers like a long time ago on Instagram for my RC stuff, and then I kind of just scrapped it because life got terrible, and you know, didn't have enough time to play with these things anymore. But yeah, trying to get back into them now. Yeah, very stock build for the most part. I did all the rust detail. I also recently, since I got it back together and running again, did the shackle reversal kit on it, which this here was cut out actually initially because when I was driving it back in the day, the front shackle would always hit this like front center garnish piece. So that was just frustrating, so I ended up just cutting it so I could get all the flex out of it and it wasn't hitting the body. But now I kind of slightly regret it because now that I have the shackle reversal kit on it, I don't have to worry about that. But I don't even think this was around back then when I had this truck. Yeah, at least I did another one of these 3D printed crossbar things here, so it looks still pretty scale. One of the other things I did, body-wise, that is detailed that you probably won't see anyone else that did. The front grille on Tamiya and RC4WD drive is actually, or the front like clip piece, because this is all one unit, is actually wrong. It splits like over here somewhere. Alright, so I actually just found the original grill, but as you can see, see how much longer that is. And this is actually, I don't know if you can tell on camera, but it's curved. So this is actually out to about right here, and that would be like your fender body line for the front, which is incorrect on a real Toyota pickup. The fender actually comes up to here. So I ended up cutting where the body line should be, and then putting these two little screws to look like the bolts on a real truck. Yeah, it was one of my pet peeves about the body. I just, you know, OCD or whatever. But yeah, you can see the original grill compared to the Tamiya grill. You know, square headlights, round headlights, and obviously this wasn't licensed back then when RC4WD drive was making these trucks, so it didn't have like the Toyota badge or anything like that. But yeah, it was one of the cooler things I did, I guess, back then. This corner where I did the thing, I kind of split it a little more to make it look like it got ripped up, like a rock or a log got smashed into the fender. Like, there's quite a bit of detail that went into this, at least for when I was doing it back then. Just different color down here on the door, as if, you know, it was rusting out and they sprayed it or whatever. I don't know. Just wanted to do a bunch of cool little details on it. Some more rust. I did a little exhaust pipe coming out. Interior, nothing too fancy. I did like a wood grain steering wheel, and there's a bunch of junk on the seat. I didn't really go over the interior on any other trucks, but this is one of the original RC4WD drive toppers. They discontinued them for several years and then I guess just re-released them. So maybe I can get a trim piece or something to fix that, but it kind of adds to the beater look, I guess. I also, one of the other things I did on this was I split the cab and the bed. It's a little beat up right now, but that way it was more realistic because you had the gap between there, but also I have it so it's only mounted on the rear, and it moves around a little bit when you're crawling. This gives it more of a scale, I don't know, scale look when it's bouncing around. I also just put these Yoda wheels on recently, but under the cab, it's got a waterproof Savox servo like we do in the other truck. Still a stock 45 turn, single speed. Oops, forgot to actually take out my battery from the last crawl. Still leaf sprung. There's no springs in the shock in the front, just all leaf springs. And then I do have the extended shock hoops again, or whatever. These are actually Grande shock hoops because back in the day they didn't sell like extended aftermarket ones, so you had to just buy the Grande ones and swap them in. The reason why these ones are shaved down is because I actually robbed these for a little bit when this truck was out of commission for my other truck that had the engine bay, and I had to shave it down so they'd fit. And then I bought ones for that and swapped these back in, but yeah, it still does the job just fine. Another thing I forgot to mention about the other trucks as well, I'm running the Bauhaus skid plate, so on the Xtracabs, and the Marlin actually comes with a higher up skid plate on it from the factory, but all these ones I upgraded to that, give you a little more clearance. Again with the O-rings and no springs in the shocks. This truck is actually a lot lighter than the other ones, so you don't need all that extra support. The rear is actually especially light, but same thing, I got a little, I got one extra spring on top to help with the axle wrap. That was the word I was looking for earlier, but that way when it's twisting it's not going to bend or snap the loose springs. So you can run them, you can run the suspension pretty soft like that. You get that extra support with that helper on the top, not on the bottom. So that's a leaf spring technique right there. And then one of the things I had to repair on the cab is this. I lost the piece, but I flipped it really hard one time when I was crawling out with my buddies, and I gotta fix that somehow and figure it out one of these days. Otherwise I'm just gonna have to continue running the topper all the time so you can't really see it, but yeah. This is the back of the cab. And it does have lights. All my trucks have lights in them. The flex test. This one's really soft. It's been worn quite a bit, but yeah, with a little extra weight of the battery, get it easy. 3 tires in the front. And the rear obviously is always more flexy than the front, but solid. There you get them all side by side. All the runners at least. Well, there's my RC collection for, at least for now. Let me know in the comments what truck is your favorite. I'm kind of curious, like, do people like the more off-road, like, capable stuff like the Marlin, or more of the scale stuff? Like, back in the day, the scaler stuff was more of a thing, scaler builds, and it was just, like, really detailed trucks, more, like, stock look, but, yeah, let me know. I'm curious what the thing is nowadays, because, like I said, I haven't been into them, or I've been into them, just haven't had time for them in several years. Once in a while, I'd take one out to the creek, and that was about it. But I'm trying to get more into it, start filming it, and hopefully get my following back up on Instagram like I did before. But yeah, if you like the video, I appreciate a like. Subscribe if you want to stay up to date with the builds and the projects, and follow my Instagram, poverty_society, if you want to see more on there, more content. And I post a lot more on there than I do YouTube, because obviously it's easier, quicker, and hopefully down the line, if I get enough subscribers and stuff like that on YouTube and Instagram again, or well, followers on Instagram, I want to do some giveaways and stuff in the future, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, the more the merrier. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.